Hello, Rachel.
How are you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing better than you, I'm thinking is the answer.
Why do you say that?
Because
I'm part of a decaying society?
yeah, you're going to have to go out to the sea. But I wanted to say straight off the bat that you're sick.
Yeah.
It is 100% terminal. And 100% contagious.
So we're Ryan and Rachel. This is our show. What show is it?
The YumYumPodcast.
Oh, you're adding a word now. We're just YumYumPodcasts. I debated whether we are the YumYum, but we're a YumYum.
Within the sentence.
Ah, and where does the YumYum come from?
From Star Trek Discovery, Commander 9D utters the phrase yum yum in response to a proposed murder.
And what a response it was. It was such an amazing response that we had to name our podcast after that response.
Changed the landscape of media thereafter.
I was a mere innocent child before that line came along, and like the planet of Epsilon 3, it awoke something deep inside of me and activated a defense system in which ever since then I've just been firing missiles up into pop culture, just saying, do you remember Yum Yum being mentioned in a modern science fiction show? Do you remember it? We're going to make our rating system it too. And so that's the context, but we are a Babylon 5 rewatch podcast for the time being. And that does mean we are a heavy spoiler related podcast for Babylon 5. So
because we have watched it many times
yes,
and we'll connect things.
We are not friendly for your first time viewers of Babylon 5. If people are looking for a first time viewing experience of a podcast for B5, check out our friends over at Chats a Television Podcast. They've covered the show already. Or our good friends over at the Last Best Babylon 5 podcast, who are currently going through it as we speak. But we are spoilers.
Easy descriptions.
So
easy to find in the description.
But they're weak in comparison to us because they don't relate everything to Yum Yum, and we are talking about...
It gives us fortitude.
Yeah, and I was going to say, none of them ask this question, which is, Rachel, who in this episode, A Voice in the Wilderness, Part 1, would have said Yum Yum?
Thrall is the one that comes to mind.
Really?
But I think that's just because he's the guest star. I don't think that's because he actually would. I think it's Londo.
Yeah, two answers for me. Londo is the actual answer, but the head of the science team, that guy,
yeah,
he's a very Yum Yum energy. He's got YYE, as we call it on this podcast, Yum Yum energy. I wanted to highlight him. Also, I want to highlight, is that guy the sexiest guest star we've had thus far? Because he was wearing a terrible outfit, yet he looked incredibly sexy in that. He had the dignified hair, he just had this demeanor, the smile, the energy, the swagger.
Looking good.
He was a fine-looking gentleman who could make this ugly brown outfit look appealing. I was, hot under the collar thinking about that.
Ryan, is that another more covert plug for the Last Best?
Was he the sex man of the episode? Yes, he was. Yes, he was. I have to tell us about the plot of A Voice in the Wilderness Part 1, according to the DVD summaries of it, because who needs any other...
Hit me with it.
It's barren and uninhabited. That's what station members think until they finally explore the strange planet nearest to them.
What?
And find it's a threat to their survival.
Oh no!
It's very short, very concise to the point. unlike the episode, which is massive, has multiple strands going on, is concise still, but that summary focuses on just one strand.
It fans out in many directions. Like, all of the cores of the feathers are straight, but when you look at the breadth in full, it's impressively large.
So, tell me about your background with this episode.
This is one that I always kind of forget. Like, it blends in with this part of the season. Like, it's not very, very distinctive in my memory of like, oh yeah, that one. Maybe it is also because it's a two-parter and it really does feel cohesive in my memories of it. So, yeah, like, it's just kind of one that's here. It doesn't do anything bad. It's just pretty solid.
Yeah.
And that's the way that I kind of remember it. Like, when we get up to it, you're like, are you excited for Drawl? And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, Drawl.
Like, it's good. A weird, smaller-ish thing that I remember is the scene where Sinclair first sees the alien that's currently in the machine on the station. And he's just like,
help me.
No, Sinclair's reaction is what I remember.
Of I'm too tired for this.
Like,
what was this?
Is this something, or just a sleep deprivation hallucination? Like, I can't be dealing with this.
This is one of the few shows in which when something like that appears to one of our main characters and they brush it off as just, I haven't had enough sleep, I buy that narrative excuse.
Yes.
Because Babylon 5 has worked into its narratives many times that these
over
people
and over again.
are overworked and rarely get any sleep. And so this hackneyed trick that is often used actually works here. And so you're right. You're right in a lot of ways, because my history with this episode and both of them is it's just a blur to me. They've never really stood out as particular favorites. The most compelling thing about them that has ever lingered with me is the fact that I never at any time thought about the planet below Babylon 5. Yeah. And evidently some people have thought about it, because the writers have thought about it, and the characters within it have thought about it. And I know other people, like our former housemate, Mark, he thought about it. And so...
And that's why I really appreciated a few episodes ago when they started including the planet in more of the CGI shots.
Yeah, and so... That's my big takeaway overall over the years of rewatches, is this is the one where they decide to explore the planet below and see if there's stuff down there. And I don't often think about the Drawl plot, or I don't often think about Garibaldi worrying about Lise on Mars, or Londo just having a wickedly fun time throughout all of the narratives, or Sinclair trying to brokering a deal, and I don't think about...
He's got to play diplomat.
He's got to play diplomat.
I have to go play diplomat for a few hours. Let me know when the survey team comes back.
Will do.
How I feel about it now on this rewatch is I still feel this thing of I feel like I don't appreciate it as much as I feel I should or could.
Yeah, like, I was trying to grapple with that idea, because, like, it's just solid, and it's very much needed at this point, and it sets up, and it links, and it's a weird sort of episode, because you think of, like, tentpole episodes of, like, it's very clear, it's in there, it's holding all of these things up. And that's not the way that Babylon 5 works, because everything is so structured. It's more like it's another stud in the wall. And for me, it's one that kind of gets plastered over and sort of forgotten about until I'm like, oh yeah, that's there. if you can understand my metaphor.
When we talked about Grail, one of the things we talked about was the writer for hire, or the different writer in charge of an episode, and how they have to work within the requirements of what the showrunner wants. And that this particular showrunner knows exactly everything he wants, and he knows what he can do and what he can't do within his own show. And the other writers never feel as bold to do this. And why I bring this up is this is the first JMS episode we've had in a little while. And it has all of these JMS flourishes that we are so familiar with, having watched Babylon 5 so many times. And so it also feels, in a way, when revisiting this, oh, I'm in familiar waters again. Oh, what a lovely time.
Homey episode.
Because JMS is always willing to have little bits of levity and character work thrown in along the massive narrative. This is a two-parter, but then you have little touches like the sexy expedition man saying, "Does anyone have a pack of cards?" No other writer, or barely any of the other writers, include those little humanizing and those little moments of levity in their work that JMS does with his scripts. And so, yeah, when I revisit this, there's that sensation of, oh, it's good to be back in the show that I like, and in the writing that I'm really familiar with and I really enjoy.
Trust.
And that's not to say that the episodes we have watched over the last few have been bad. I mean, we enjoyed Eyes, we enjoyed Legacies, but they didn't have these touches that this has.
Specific. And I think most people can recognize that there are episodes in all series that are done, good series, that are done by the showrunner that just feel different.
Because they know the world and they know the characters enough to riff a little.
Commander, what will you do if you find anything of value down there?
The odds of that are pretty small. It's probably just an automated homing beacon left over from hundreds of years ago.
Yes, but if it isn't, will you tell me?
No.
Just making sure we know where we stand.
Let's dive in to the stranger that visits the station, which is Draal, Delen's mentor.
And his heavy basket of foreshadowing that he brings on board.
Yes. So Draal is a mentor to Delen from her past. He's this interesting figure because he walks onto the station. He knows exactly where he wants to go. He wants to visit Delen. He's a Minbari. It's always interesting to see Minbaris come onto the station and what they're going to offer, because they are often, at this point in the show, antagonistic. We had the guy in the Gathering. We've had Naroon. And that's been basically it. Lanier's a mainstay character. That's a bit different. So we have this guy, and it's like, what's this guy going to bring? You can tell it's not antagonism because of just looking at him. He seems like a warm, gentle soul of a man.
Warmth was the word that I wanted to bring up.
He seems like your grandpa.
Yeah.
And that's kind of his character, is he's kind of a grandpa figure. Or father figure, at least, to Delen. And his whole thing...
Old teacher vibe, too.
His whole thing in the story is he's going to come to Babylon 5, say goodbye to Delen, catch up with Delen, and for us, the audience in this particular part, give us world building and exposition about the Minbari culture and society.
And explaining what's going on in Minbar. Like, what's happening on there? Like, how are things? Because we know that the Grey Council is fairly shady.
And off in the distance.
And
the great thing about Draal 2 coming in is, unlike with Naroon and unlike with Delen, he's not coming in telling us about the caste systems and the Grey Council. He's telling us about just the society, the people on the streets, the people in the cities, and their animosity and their sense of tension and this...
Not paying attention to the division but the consequences of the division.
And just this general sense of malaise and weariness and loss that the people are feeling, and that Dral himself is feeling like a man out of step, out of time, out of place, to the point in which he's decided to go to the sea, which is to go travel amongst the stars, and they treat it as basically you're killing yourself. That's kind of how they treat this. It's a self-sacrifice of some sort. You're removing yourself from the society because you've gotten to a certain age in which you're no longer able to contribute anything. And so you remove yourself and you go out and contribute to others, and eventually, you disappear. And Delen's, of course, mortified by this because it's her mentor, her friend, Dral. He's far too young to be doing this, but he feels he needs to do it because of what we said. The society on Minbar is becoming something he is unsure of.
Minbar isn't his home anymore, and he is unwilling to stay there and see it devolve. Like, that's what's happening in his opinion. Like, the society is breaking down and it is not holding together, and it's not upholding and perpetuating the values that he sees as the tenets and principles of their culture.
Let's talk about the parallels between Minbar and Earth, because both cultures go through a massive civil war. Both cultures go through this, like we're saying, a shift in attitudes
within
and perspective.
The series of Babylon 5.
Yeah, and both of them have a weird relationship with the fallout of how the war went, in which basically the surrender of the war has made both sides very internally and externally antagonistic and odd and strange and strained.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about the parallels about that, because one of the things too is why the war ended is because the Minbari believe the humans to be them, basically, to have their souls in them. So it's even more interesting on that level of how strong the connections between Earth and the Minbari are, because in a lot of these shows you get that speech, and we'll get it in a few episodes' time by Delenn, in which the aliens, and they do it in this episode too in a way, where the aliens are always fascinated by us humans because we're the glue that holds everything together. Oh, we're so different and we're so quirky. I appreciate that. In a way, the Minbari have this strange fascination with us because they see us as a version of themselves. And you see that in the narrative here, because thus far in the season, we've been hearing a lot about the world of Earth. We haven't been seeing it, but we've been hearing about the change and seeing shadows of it. And now we're getting the exact same thing for Minbar. How do you feel about all that?
I think it is one of those aspects of Babylon 5 that make it a rich tapestry of a world. And it is interesting to see the way that they do that and the way that they continue to explore and unfold those ideas.
But what do you think it's saying from a narrative and a writing perspective to mirror and parallel and join these two things together? Because you are agreeing that there is a lot of similarities to how these two stories are going in terms of the two cultures and races that were once at war with each other and now going on these similar paths that eventually lead to a civil war.
Yeah. The idea that's kind of just popped into my head now is that they're both under the influence of the Vorlons. Like, the Vorlons are particularly focused on, like, more peace. Like,
Order. On the Minbari in particular.
Yeah, with the Minbari in particular. They go ham with that.
Yeah.
But both cultures are unable to eradicate
their own
disordinates and conflict within their society, because like Minbar, and more so Minbar than Earth, they create these divisions and
These castes.
delineate people, roles, houses, cities, everything into these tiny boxes.
Yes, you have to fit in this place.
Yes, but that division and simplification cannot be long-lasting.
Yeah, the segregation of their society.
And Earth goes through a different sort of process with that.
Well, they're kind of the opposite, because you said
Yeah.
the Vorlons, but let's not forget the Earth stuff is majorly influenced because the shadows
yeah.
are involved. And so, again, it's kind of showing you how these two god figures playing with their toys have affected these toys and ruined them in lots of ways. And again, it's not black or white. The Vorlons aren't good. Look at how the Minbari are going nowadays because of this strict adherence to having to be in order and to be in their place.
Yeah.
And it's leading to this sense of sorrow and grief that he's talking about.
What I was sort of trying to get at is that, like, Minbaris use that division to try and create strength.
Mm-hmm.
But they are creating a sense of otherness within their communities, because it's like, I am warrior, you are religious, you are worker, I am religious, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, you are Minbari, but you are not the same as me. And Earth
Is messy.
But they still go, I am me, you are other, I do not like other.
Yeah.
But it's like, I am human,
Mm-hmm.
I am Earth.
Earth first.
Earth first. You are a Mars person, not a human.
Yeah, Marzies.
You're a Marzi. So, like, there's all these delineations and categories that are serving different purposes for the grander scale of things. And they're meant to be doing these certain things, and they're serving purposes for ideological conversations that Babylon 5 is having.
And it's meant to give the people in both Earth and Minbar purpose. Earth First is giving those people a purpose and an identity and a motivation, and it's bad. And same with the caste system. And with the war, it ended abruptly, and it doesn't make any sense with how either side sees how things work, because they don't know the answers, not all of them, and people who do, it's this whole entire thing.
It's like 7 people in the entire universe get to know at this stage in the timeline of Babylon 5 why the war ended.
Yeah.
And it's just batshit insane to think that that's not gonna fuck with everybody's heads.
And with the Minbari, like with Earth, they define themselves by the war. We are the winners, we're doing this for a holy cause. And Earth, they define themselves by the war as well, with the fact that they thought that they were going to win, the Earth is great, but then they were showed that they're small and you could be easily defeated. And it makes it complex for both sides, because one side thought that they were better than they were and were shown that they could be eradicated, and they don't know why they weren't. That would build up a complex. And with the Minbari, they were apparently going to exterminate this whole entire race because of this blood feud, holy war justification, and then it just stopped.
There is a sense that we are lost and drifting. In the streets and the temples, you can hear it in their voices, their manner,
An anger just beneath the surface, a growing dissatisfaction, a self-involvement above the needs of others. It is not the same world in which I was born, Delenn. Not the same world at all.
It's one of those plots where it exists because you know that there's going to be a convenient payoff to him in the second part that will wrap up all the other plots. And he is the guy who's going to plug himself into the machine, and that's why he exists. And I unfortunately don't really care about Dral because in this first part, I feel that we don't get to know enough about him, and I don't feel like we get to spend enough time with him, and I wish in this first part, because this is the building foundation, and I'm sure maybe in the next part we'll get more to satisfy myself, but he exists in this weird void in the episode in which every time it cuts back to him, you're like, oh yeah, he's involved too. He's going to be involved somehow, but we don't know how yet. And he's a nice old man, but every time it cut back to him, I was like, okay, you're a thing that exists because you're going to be needed narratively in the next part.
Yeah.
And when you do know how it all plays out, these lines that he talks about are just all kind of saying to the audience, I am willing to sacrifice myself. And that's all he's saying.
Over
and over again. In a manner of speaking.
Yeah.
And he's going around to Londo and other people saying, hello, I'm Dral and I'm going to sacrifice myself in the second part.
Yeah.
And it makes it a little lackluster to watch this play out because the actor's doing
it makes his scenes boring.
The actor's a charming performer, but the character himself isn't anything of note.
I've gotten the point. Can we move on?
And Delenn is just in awe of him and asking him questions, and I don't feel like I get a lot of feelings about Delenn in this plot either. It's not like I learn a lot about Delenn from his interactions, other than obviously she's religious, which I already know.
Yep.
Because she's our main character in the show. She's a main cast member, so having a guest character come to her, you would expect that it would give more to her. But in this episode, not really. She takes him around to people going, this is my friend Dral, and people are like, hi Dral.
Howdy.
It's fine. Mirafalon, great performance. They get on, Dral and her have a good rapport together. But every time I come back to them, all I could think is this exists solely so that you could have him sacrifice himself in the second plot, and it doesn't feel in the second episode, and it doesn't feel like this is actually something truly substantive. It is there to tell us he's sacrificing himself and to let us know that the Minbari culture is not okay. And I don't know. That's good information to know, but in the rest of the context of the episode, it feels a little bit out of place because there are higher stakes at play here.
It's a part of how this episode is serviceable. Like, it's serving a purpose.
A function.
And some parts fly higher than that for us. And aspects like Dral don't. But they're not bad. They're just carrying it forward, and this one drags a little bit more.
It Drals a little bit more.
Go to hell.
One of the other plots we have here is Garibaldi is really, really upset and really, really, really angry and pissed off and whingy. I gotta be honest, there's a little bit of a whinger in this episode because there's a riot on Mars.
He's a dog after a bone.
There's an insurgency on Mars. And his former lover and girlfriend of some time, or was she a fiance? I can't remember.
They talked about marriage.
Lise Hampton, everyone's favorite character. We all love Lise. What a great character. I can't wait to see.
Everybody's ecstatic when she comes back.
Oh, what a great female character, huh? Come on, you know what? Can we all give it up for Lise? Great character. Love Lise. She's great. I love Franz. He's also good. We'll talk about him next episode. Maybe he'll be the Yum Yum candidate. But Garibaldi is very upset because there is a thing going on Mars, and we know Mars...
He wants to talk to his ex-girlfriend, damn it!
We know Mars is a thing that exists in this show. We've heard rumblings about things going on Mars, but this is
free Mars.
This is the first time in which we get a full spotlight dedication to free Mars, and it is a thing that is going to be important in the show, the Mars resistance movement, and how they are showing us also early on that Earth isn't afraid to put their military boot down against themselves and fucking massacre each other, which we've said this many
Order will be enforced.
We've said this many a times. It is still kind of unusual to me because of my Star Trek brain programming to see in a science fiction show of this era, Earth people killing, like, the government sending soldiers in to kill terror. It still feels so fresh and weird and unique to me, even though I've seen Babylon 5 multiple times. The fact that this is a storyline here is just something that I go, they tried to do that with the Marquis, didn't they, in Star Trek, and they really fucking dropped the ball there, didn't they, Star Trek Voyager?
I don't have that sense of freshness when it comes to this, because I don't know, I think I'm not as indoctrinated into the Star Trek way of thinking, because I came up on it later, and it wasn't the sci-fi that I cut my teeth on.
Yeah.
The sci-fi that I really cut my teeth on was dystopian, so this is what I expect.
Yeah, even Doctor Who would have Earth people being shit to one another, so it isn't as unusual for you, but it's still that thing for me. And I want to talk about something that I feel is necessary, and I think gets swept under the rug because this is not how things played out. Michael O'Hare left the show, so Sinclair's arc had to be cut. Whenever I think of this episode, I think of the fact that we learned that Sinclair was from Mars.
Yeah!
And I often think about how incredible it would have been if Sinclair continued on, knowing where the story does go in terms of them breaking away from Earth. Earth would then grill him for his obvious indoctrination from these aliens and other beings that hate Earth, because they already hate Sinclair so much in this show already because of all these actions he's taken that is considered disloyal. And then later they would have teamed up with the Mars Resistance, as they do in this show, and to imagine Sinclair having to negotiate with the Mars Resistance people, he himself being from Mars would have actually had something poignant there, and Earth could have spun that as like another fuck you to Babylon 5, because look at him, he's from Mars, he's a Marsi, as well as he's a Minbari guy who loves. He's
always been an off-worlder.
Yeah, he's always been against Earth. He is a.
He'll never understand Earth like we do.
And I always think about that because we didn't get that because of the obvious reasons, but you could see those seeds are planted here, where they were going to grow into something far more insidious. But in the moment here, it is just a piece of fun trivia.
And it doesn't feel like something that's incomplete. No. It's interesting to try and think about how they would explore that, but it doesn't feel like it's a dangling thread.
And when it ties to Garibaldi has a deep connection to Mars. And so his involvement in the Civil War plot as well could have been embroiled in that too. And so that could have been really fun to see play out. And when it comes to Garibaldi and Mars, we know from previous episodes he had a terrible time being on Mars. He met Sinclair on Mars and managed to escape from Mars and go to Babylon 5 and restart his life. This episode serves, as does Babylon squared to let us know that actually Garibaldi did have good things on Mars that he left behind. Yeah. How do you feel about that aspect? Because I often forget about this with Garibaldi. It's not one of the things that leaps to the top of my brain when it comes to his character, that yes, he was an alcoholic, and yes, he had these troublesome times on Mars, but he did have a somewhat steady relationship that could have blossomed him into something more than what it did, and he up and left it behind because he thought just burning the bridges and starting anew would be the correct way to heal. And we see here, evidently it isn't, because it's gnawing at him and it's eating away at him to the point in which he has to harass Talia Winters to get the Psi Corps to help him out, to contact an ex-girlfriend.
It's always fascinating to me in fiction and in real life when you hear people's stories about how even in the darkest moments of your life, there's usually something that you're clinging onto, the silver lining. And that Garibaldi has this relationship that he didn't realize how much he cared about still. Like, he has just sort of suppressed his feelings, but the realization that time may have run out because she might be dead and he might not be able to get back with her is...
Or even just apologize.
Yeah. Properly. But it's very clear that he wants her back. He wants to repair things. He wants...
a connection.
He wants that connection back because he realized how good that was.
And how shitty he left it.
Yeah.
In a way, because we do see in Babylon Squared the flashback of the events of him leaving, and the way he describes it in this episode is ever so slightly different to how we see it.
Yeah.
In a way...
And like, that could be like, it's just scripting.
No.
It could be like, that's
character.
A character thing, because it's just like, yeah, of course he would phrase it slightly differently or remember it in a different way to make it softer on himself.
I always roll my eyes at Garibaldi and lovelorn Garibaldi. I think it's because I don't care
such
about...
a horn dog?
No. Because I think Jerry Doyle plays it up too much in a different direction to how Garibaldi... It feels like he turns on soap opera Jerry Doyle performance instead of the Garibaldi that we currently have.
Think about who in Garibaldi's mind would he have learned to love from?
Oh, Walker Smith. Walker Smith would have taught him about love at the titty bar.
No,
who then?
Daffy Duck.
Oh, that's
so
as good as my
answer.
answer.
It makes complete sense that he would just go head over heels and ignore everything else, and it's like he's either all in or all out. There's nothing in between.
But I'm talking about Garibaldi in love. I often feel, and I can't tell if it's the writing or Jerry Doyle's performance, but I feel like it's too much of a complete flip around in tone and characterization, and I roll my eyes because this is not the Garibaldi I like, and I don't care about it, but...
It doesn't feel like an aspect of his character. It feels like it's slapped on like a sticker for certain episodes.
It feels very soap opera, but I appreciate what it adds to his character here because I deeply relate to someone like Garibaldi in terms of he has this absolute disdain and horrible relationship with this location he spent a large period of time on. I was on Mars. It ruined my life. I had a miserable time. I've moved elsewhere and now my life is great. That is my life. I lived in a small country.
My career is great.
I lived in a small country town. I hated it, hated everything about it. I wanted to leave. I left. My life's been better since. But, like Garibaldi, sometimes I forget about the good things, such as the people and the community and those that I had around me at the time. And that is deeply relatable to me. It makes Garibaldi more of a person than a fun character to me. I deeply relate to him in this moment. And although I don't care about Lise, and I don't care about the relationship he has with her, and that also is majorly factored in because of how Lise comes in later and what a non-character Lise is. If Lise was a really strong character, I would be talking about this in a far more positive light, but because she isn't when we get her later on, I look at this and go, oh, okay, Lise, yay. Whoop-de-doo, yay, Lise, okay, cool, whatever. And I'm not as invested in him finding out if she's alive or not, because I know I get to meet her later, and I don't ever really get the feeling of I got to know her or she was a good character, so I don't give a rat's ass about Lisa's safety.
No.
But it delivers us to an amazing scene in which Garibaldi's feeling blue. He's feeling a bit down. He's drinking his water at the bar. And Londo
good old friend.
Londo has to come in. And outside of every scene in Born to the Purple, is this the most quintessential Londo scene we get in terms of encapsulating what his character was in this first season?
Yeah.
Mr. Garibaldi, whatever it is, it can't be that bad.
The way the scene plays out is it's Londo just telling a very funny but also very personal story that relates to Garibaldi's situation in which and it makes Garibaldi feel better. And it's typical writing, TV writing. This
is not a conversation that an average person would have.
No.
Like, it's not. And it's not written to feel that way. It's not acted to be that way. It's a television scene.
It works because of two main reasons. The writing is 100% on point for both characters involved, but mainly Londo, who is a character we like. And two, and I think this is the most important, is the performance from Peter Jurasik. He nails it. He just fucking nails it. This isn't even his episode, and he steals the episode from every single other person.
Because he's the thread.
He's in all of the stories, but he is so fucking amazing in this scene because, yeah, we all appreciate his acting when it comes to all the dramatic stuff, but he is a great comedic performer, and this scene has so much comedy and levity to it, but he rides the line of playing up to the yucks and the yums and the laughter, but also getting you a little bit choked up a bit because it is a fun, cute, emotional story, and it allows you to look at Londo in a much more positive light because thus far his story in this episode has been negotiating deals and talking shit about the Narn and talking shit about humans, and even those were kind of charming and cute, but still kind of sleazy Londo.
Their hatred could fly.
Yeah, and sleazy Londo. Scuzzy Londo, but here he's telling a sleazy story about this dancer that he fell in love with, but it's really sweet. And her advice, again, Peter Jurasik's delivery of it is what matters because he does the full body to it. I love how he gestures with his hands, that when she leaned over to look at him, he gestures her tits.
Yep.
It's one of those things where it's really hard to describe in a podcast. Like, it's just really hard to describe in a conversation other than saying the scene works because it's just really well done. There's lots being said there. We get lots of fun backstory about Londo and how he fell in love and he married this,
for one of his wives.
And how the comedic payoff to it all was, it was terrible. She had this horrible voice that could curdle fresh milk. And it's there to make Garibaldi feel better. Garibaldi's at his low point in the story. He believes Lisa's dead, or he can't get in contact, or whatever it is. He's feeling really shit. And then Londo's there to perk him back up, and it ends with the perfect comedic ending that one could do. And I love it because I always think about this in this TV show, which is Londo buys a drink, drinks a drink, walks away, doesn't pay for it. And the bartender says, hey, somebody's got to pay for that drink.
Yeah, when Garibaldi tries to just walk away.
I mean, that's just fun, but I appreciate, because usually in TV shows, they don't acknowledge that. Sometimes they just walk away. You know what bothers me in B5?
They really follow through on the credits and the credit cards.
Yeah. You know what really bothers me in B5, though? This still bothers me. People order food, eat a bit, and then walk away and leave the food there. I'm like, why did you even fucking get it?
Yeah.
It bothers me so much in this show. They get so much food and then just not eat it and then walk away. And I'm like, oh, well, you're not going to put the food away? You're just going to sit there on that table? You don't even, fine, whatever, eat your food and then leave it there and not even finish it off.
Especially
okay,
at
wasteful.
fresh air. Like, that shit's expensive.
But, Rachel, whatever it is, it can't be that bad. Moments like this, too, you love because they're the times when Londo's happy. Yeah. He's going to go off and spread happiness to the rest of the station. You're like, you won't next season.
No.
You're going to spread misery to everyone around you next season. Everyone's going to hate you and be afraid of you and want things of you.
You'll spread some war crimes.
Yeah, you spread some war and war crimes. And so you look at this moment as well and you smile because, remember when he could have a drink at the bar with Garibaldi and have a laugh and they were friends?
And then there comes a point when that's all that he wants.
And he can't get it.
You looked as if you needed a friend.
I did. Thanks.
You're welcome. Now, I go to spread happiness through the rest of the station. It's a terrible responsibility, but I have learned to live with it.
Talia Winters is in this episode too, and the episode opens with her, I do believe, or she's one of the first people we meet in this story, and how she's concerned about how Garibaldi is always in the tube waiting for her.
Yeah, I think we get Dral first, and then
we get some Talia.
We get some Sinclair, because then it's like Sinclair comes up to Talia, and she's worried like,
about
what's going on.
Garibaldi's always stalking her, and he's always a creep.
And then he proceeds to be a creep, and then they're like, okay, we're both just going to take the stairs rather than the lift with Garibaldi.
I liked Talia in this episode. I'm going to say it. I thought she was great. I liked how she was implemented into the plot because they introduce her in that moment, and it seems like a little cold open gag, and you may not see Talia again in the episode. But then, because she was introduced in the opening, and because she was introduced in relation to Garibaldi, to then have Garibaldi come to her later and ask something of her, and she wants to reject it because she thinks he's being a creep again?
Yes! And it makes sense. It makes sense that she has that reaction, and that's a good way to remind us at the start of the episode. And then it also makes sense that she's just like, I'll ask.
The main plot of the episode is the planet below has some rumblings going on, and then it shoots a bunch of lasers and then eventually missiles at a survey team trying to gather some stuff on it.
Because they're like, we want to find out what the fuck is happening to this planet. Because if it implodes because of all of these earthquakes and shit that's fucking happening, Babylon 5 is fucked.
Yeah, because Babylon 5 relies on the rotation around it. And
it's in orbit of the planet.
Yeah, and one of the neat details that we know and further learn is that Babylon 4 could survive without that because it could manually travel around places, while B5 doesn't have that. And we actually saw that in The Gathering, that once it was off the axis and out of the orbit in a way, it really fucks up, so they have to move everything. And so it also reminds you very, very subtly.
They cut corners.
No, I was going to say.
They cut corners with the building of Babylon 5 because nobody thought that it would survive. I know that's not the point that you were going to make.
What I was going to say is, it's an obvious statement, but it's one that you take for granted because you're watching it and you just get invested in it. But this is a tin can in space, and if you crush it or break it or crack it, everyone's dead.
Yeah!
And space is a harsh mistress that does not support life and will kill you. And this is...
Shit gets fucked easy.
So if this planet explodes or decays or has anything going wrong or shoots at Babylon 5 and cracks it open, that's 250,000 people dead. Right then and there. And I always appreciate it very much when Babylon 5 reminds us of that, because
how vicariously they are placed into space.
Yeah, like, okay, we're a city in space, and if there was just a big slash on one side of it, everyone's dead.
No time to evacuate.
No time to evacuate.
Everybody's dead.
It's just a neat touch. And so we have the science team, the sexy science team, the sex team, we'll call them. The sex man team, we'll call them. I don't know what to make of them because they seem fairly important to the plot. They're introduced as the people going down there. They're introduced as people who's got the knowledge and the know-how. They're arrogant and they're still willing to go down. We get a lot of characterization on that main guy, the sex man. And he has a wife that's Mrs. Columbo by the sounds of it because she loves solving mysteries.
I love that little random touch.
I do too. And then we never see him again after this episode.
Nah.
Not even in the second part.
Nah, he gone.
And it makes me
and
wonder...
they went to the planet. Now our main crew is the important ones again.
And is this a negative side effect of JMS's strong characterization of people, even if they're small players? Because I'm invested in this guy and I want to see him in the next one.
I want him to find out what is really going on.
I have more investment in him in this one part than I do Draal in this one part.
Oh yeah, and I have more investment in him than Garibaldi.
But what do you think?
In this storyline.
What do you think about that? Because we often praise the fact that the writing will more often than not give the big and small players this real lived-in sense and you get invested in them. But here I am now saying that maybe JMS shouldn't have given this guy so much because it makes me feel like there's going to be something there with this character in these two parts, but there isn't. No. He's just there to do two things, mainly. Tell us about the sci-fi techno-babble garbage that doesn't really matter, but we need to know it, and for Ivanova to do the God speech.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a double-edged sword, I guess. Like, it's just like, you can use too much of a good thing.
Yeah, and maybe it's the actor, too. Maybe the actor's just too fucking sexy and charming to put in the episode because you're distracting us, the audience, by... He seems like a main character type of actor. He just has that presence to him in which it's like you would be a protagonist in a show.
What are you going to do now?
In order, process the data we collected from the power burst, then call my wife on Proxima. She loves mysteries.
This doesn't worry you in the slightest?
On the contrary, it scares the hell out of me. But what better way to go out than in the cause of advancing scientific knowledge?
So I believe that we briefly mentioned this, but it deserves its own spotlight, not the actor spotlight, because that comes later.
Oh, I was going to play the actor spotlight music when you said spotlight. Instead, I'll just play Michael Keaton saying spotlight.
Spotlight.
A wonderful moment, a glorious moment with Ivanova, where she's really fucking pissed at the sex man.
Yeah, she's really pissed at this sex man for being too sexy. and he dared to go down to the planet outside of her advice. He went against it.
He broke that threshold, and not her pleasure won.
No, he won't. And he better not try to touch her pleasure threshold. She's a spoken for woman. Talia's in this episode, and they don't share any scenes together. Just putting that down on the table right now.
And also he seems to be monogamously married.
Well, I mean, does the wife exist? We don't know. But you were saying Ivanova is very pissed at him and his team.
Very pissed.
And she needs to give them a little speech about
She reels them out. And, like, if I were you, I would just drop her whole speech here. Because, like, we cannot do it justice.
And just one more thing. On your trip back, I'd like you to take the time to learn the Babylon 5 mantra. Ivanova is always right. I will listen to Ivanova. I will not ignore Ivanova's recommendations. Ivanova is God. And, if this ever happens again, Ivanova will personally rip your lungs out. Babylon Control out.
You could deliver this speech in so many different ways performance-wise, but Claudia Christian knows how to do the comedic delivery, the physicality,
and the editing,
the exaggeration.
And that is spot on as well. Like, it just pairs well with what's being said, and it helps build that scene up to the crescendo moment. And then I love when it's like starting to kind of drop back down, and you know that the transition's coming. She's like, you know, I was kidding, right?
Yeah, to God. Also, another factor to the enjoyment is it is the show acknowledging the stupid thing that shows do like all the time, in which it's that thing of, don't do that thing, and then that person does that thing, and they're like, you did the thing, how could you? And that how could you moment is not rather how could you, but how fucking dare you? You have to listen. You should have listened to me because I actually know my shit.
I told you for a good fucking reason not to do it.
And it reminds you that Ivanova is the character that everyone should listen to. Ivanova is the very wise character. Sinclair's wise as well, but Ivanova has her wisdom we've spoken of many a times already. And this is it's just a funny speech. And it's got an amazing set of lines. We have in our description in this episode that never forget that Yum Yum is God, because Ivanova is God. And it is also an endearing moment for me when it comes to Ivanova, because I just like seeing her be a badass. It's also another it's one of those things where you describe it as, that's a badass moment. She's a no-nonsense lady, and she's taking no shit from these stupid scientists. No matter how sexy the lead one is, she ain't taking no shit. And it's awesome to see also her play the second in charge and actually see the word charge be used, that she's using her authority and she's just saying, I am fucking God and you better listen to me next time, Buster.
So comfortable at that post at CNC with her command, with her station, with her crew, and everything just feels right.
I like the Epsilon 3 plot. I like it. How do you feel about it here?
In this episode alone, it is like, okay, I'm gonna trust that this is going somewhere. And on the repeat viewing, it's just like, yep, got it. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember exactly what happens in this storyline, and the journey to get to the point when Draal is in the machine doesn't get more rewarding the more times that I watch it.
So you find it more of a slog than something enjoyable?
It's not exactly a slog. Like, it doesn't drag that much, but it's just like, yes, and the wheel turns. And it's doing its thing, and it's heading towards the place. That's the way that I feel about the whole Draal and his connection to the planet.
Yeah, I don't know. I find it thrilling in this episode because it unnerves everyone who knows about it, because they've all become comfortable with the fact that this is a dead planet underneath them,
and that's stable.
And
it's
now
a stable dead planet.
And now everything has changed. Maybe there's life down there. There was life down there once. It's sending this beam out to someone to call for help to come here, and they don't know who's going to come through that gate. And that kind of stuff is really great. And how Sinclair has to juggle all of these things. He has to juggle this weird hologram mystery. He has to actually juggle Ivanova and the science team, and dealing with Delenn, and dealing with the Mars situation, and he's having to prioritize. And once he does find out that there is a possibility of life down there, he takes the initiative and he's like, this is a first contact situation. I really want to stretch my legs and go down there and see what's happening. And once we go down there too, I think it is good to note that this is the first time, really, in which we've been off of Babylon 5 with our main character. We're going down to a different set, a different location.
Yeah, like they've gone off in the fighters before.
But I mean like an actual place, not just space.
Yep.
They're going to a new place, and it feels, as we've talked about, that's what Star Trek does. They have these crappy cave sets, and it's funny to see Babylon 5 have their crappy cave sets and their crappy little hallway sets that we don't get to see usually. And I think that's important to note down, because it's in a way the first step on the path of how we can have stories expand beyond the physical location of Babylon 5 itself, and not just in terms of going into this sector of space and our spaceships.
Yeah. And they don't do that a whole lot, because the story is about Babylon 5.
Yeah.
And it's the heart and the center, and they don't stray from it unless it's like it's really necessary for the story that is going to happen on Babylon 5.
And I like once they get down, well, one, I like them going down there and having to dodge these defenses. The tactics, the ships above have to shoot to distract these missiles. They land, and they also have to think about how fast they're going and how much time they need to slow down so they don't just crash. I love those attention to details, because again, we know that they aren't going to smash and crash and die, but it adds a sense of tension and realism to the whole entire affair. Them in the actual hallway, there's a dead body there. They test out this booby trap and have to wait a few seconds to jump through and run. It just shows our character's intelligence and the tech that is in this place, and the fact that this place is guarded, and that there was an advanced civilization there once, and also that evidently other people have figured out this location, have tried to do stuff down here, because that dead alien guy, his body, to me at least, looked very different to the original inhabitants of this planet, the guy that's plugged into the machine. So some of the aliens have been to this planet before and figured out that this was down here and have died, and then just either given up or that information was lost.
Yeah.
That's a cool detail that they never touched upon again.
Nah.
They don't need to. They don't need to. That tells itself. It does.
Shades a little bit of the story in.
And then, yeah, the reveal that there's this forbidden planet-like cityscape inside the planet is wonderful, because it does remind me of Forbidden Planet. There's an exact shot in Forbidden Planet that's one-to-one similar to this, except for this is CGI instead of models. And the show wears its sci-fi influences on its sleeve a few times, and this is an example of such. But how did you feel, and how do you feel about the reveal that there's a guy inside of the planet that operates the planet?
Yeah, it's such a weird, cool idea. But I do want to say, first off, that their awe at seeing the technology is so endearing. And it's such a cute moment when they're just completely struck by this place. And it is just so fascinating, the idea of that this planet still requires a organism at the center of it.
With the ore, that is something we don't get to see our characters have a lot, because that's something we see again more often with Star Trek. Here, Babylon 5 is paperwork, bureaucracy,
jaded,
a lot more cynical, a lot more realistic, I guess, but I agree, that's a great moment. But yeah, there's a living organism, a guy plugged into a machine that's operating this whole entire thing.
They're so advanced, but they still need a person to run all of it. And it's just is it for a fail-safe? Is it because they couldn't figure out how to synthesize this last part? Why is it here? Because every other aspect of this planet has had a very clear purpose. So you expect an explanation and a purpose and a clarity for why does that dude have to be there?
Yeah, but does he know the hokey pokey?
It doesn't mean anything. I had been studying it for 7 days. I had the computer analyze it. I swear to you, it does not mean a thing.
Is it time for the actor spotlight?
I think it is. I think it's time to discuss an actor that appeared in this episode, talk about their performance, what we thought about them, their character, and what we know them from elsewhere, and or just general information we've learned about said performer. Who are we going to be discussing for this one? Is it going to be the sexy scientist?
No.
We've talked about him a lot. I feel like we should talk about Dr. Columbo.
That would have been fun, but that wasn't who you picked, Ryan. You picked Draal.
Yeah, I picked Draal. I thought Draal would be interesting to talk about. I find him a fascinating figure.
I'm
He's a
probably
Minbari with a beard.
I'm gonna butcher this man's name, but I believe it is pronounced Louis Turin.
Or Lewis.
The reason why I vaguely did it the way that I did is because he was born in Quebec, Canada. So he likely has some kind of French connection and heritage.
French-Canadian. We'll have to ask our good friends Pat and Nick, who are Canadian, and they must know everything about Canada. I know they're not French-Canadian, but they can just tell us everything that we need to know. Give us an email, tell us about it, Nick and Pat. I expect it from you by the next part, okay? So, let's hear about our good friend Draal. Let's first talk about his performance in the episode. He brings more than the material is.
Yes. That warmth comes from him as a performer.
And cold, and he has a cold presence to him as well.
A detachment.
A Minbari quality.
Yeah.
He knows how to play a Minbari. There are some who don't, but he does know how to play one. He has this rigid quality, that kind of off-kilter alien nature to him, but that warm, sweet grandpa energy in which you feel like he would tell you stories about the days in which he would push a wheel with a stick down a little alley when he was a little boy.
Like he had that little spinning top.
I had a penny farthing. When I grew up, my father had a penny farthing when I grew up, and it was a beautiful penny farthing. I loved him in this, and I always found it weird that he did not come back as Draal, and they got an actor who was so the opposite of him in performance.
Yeah,
Draal here is soft, timid, warm, gentlemanly, and the other Draal is so loud, boisterous, jovial, angry, emotional. It's just a really different portrayal. And I feel like this version of Draal, even though we get him pretty much equal amount to the other one, kind of gets forgotten as the portrayal, even though it's the one we mentioned, because he isn't so boisterous as the other one, and he doesn't have the famous inflection of, my name is Draal, which is always what I think of when I hear Draal.
Yeah.
Here, he's good.
Okay, well, this is the explanation that I found for why he didn't come back.
As Draal. He does come back as Brother Theo.
Yes. Tureen was unavailable due to health reasons to reprise the role of Draal during the second season. This led to the role being recast with John Shuck?
I don't know.
John Shuck, with the explanation for the differences in the appearance being that the machine had rejuvenated Draal to the point where he looked much younger than he did before.
Yeah. A nice try, B5.
Yeah, like you stuck a Band-Aid on it.
Nice try. I know what you're trying to do there, B5. You didn't fool me, not for a fucking second. Don't you give me that bullshit. Don't you give me that.
Is there anything else that you want to say about his performance before I give you some facts about the man?
No, anything you want to say about it at all?
No, like
he has a beard.
Yeah.
Mbryo the beard, how do you feel? Do you like it? Do you hate it? What do you think? Should they have beards?
I like him with a beard. I think it makes sense.
Yeah? Minbari beards? How do you feel?
I feel like older Minbari, yes. Younger Minbari, no. Middle-aged Minbari, maybe goatee?
It has been too long, Delenn. You have forgotten your training. Soon you will have forgotten all about your old friend, Draal.
Not if I live to be 1001.
We'll start off with the not fun thing. So he was born. Well, he was born in 1933. That's fun. That's fine. That's happy.
Yeah, I mean, well, the Great Depression was happening, but okay.
Yeah. But he died in 2006.
So 12 years after this.
Yeah.
Okay.
He only had 25 credits on IMDb.
Yeah, and I looked through them, and I know him from nothing.
Yeah, it's lots of small parts from what I could find.
Yeah.
He was in the 4th Hellraiser movie. Hellraiser
Yeah, that's the one I'm most
Bloodline.
interested in watching, just to see how he factors in. I can't imagine Brother Theo being in a Hellraiser movie.
I got amused by the fact that he was, like, one of his, like, known fors was Mystic Pizza.
Oh, Mystic Pizza.
Where, you know,
that changes everything.
A young girl is going through a transformative time
At a pizza shop.
in her puberty while she works in a pizza shop.
And Zach Allen comes in and orders a pizza to get for Lisa, and it changes her life. Yeah, I love that movie. We all love that movie.
He was also on Broadway.
Yes.
So, which he has in common with the second Draal, who, interestingly enough, the second Draal couldn't come back for an episode that they wanted him for because he was busy performing on Broadway.
Wow. I imagine that's the episode when they brought Zathras back.
Yeah.
Because that episode screams Draal should be here.
Yes.
But did they ever perform together on Broadway?
No.
Was the second Draal his replacement on Broadway every time he was leaving?
No, I didn't look up whether they were.
I would love it if those two, for some reason, had competing Broadway careers in which it's like, damn, you keep stepping on my roles. I'm just stepping in when you're not available.
He was in a play called Amadeus.
Yes, Amadeus.
With Tim Curry and Sir Ian McKellen.
Oh, man. I'd watch all three of them just chat to one another, let alone be in a play.
One of his early roles was Merlin in Camelot.
He's always been old, huh?
Yeah.
He's always been old,
He's
huh?
always been old.
Because he's, 63 or 2 when he did this, and I always thought he was in his 70s.
Yeah.
He's just got this old quality to him.
Yeah, he got it down. One of the credits in a play that he did. Like, this is the way that it's listed in the playbill. Siegfried von Konsgewald, a German ghost.
Yes.
Like, that's the title of his character.
Yes.
Name? A German ghost.
A German ghost.
A German ghost. And then the other fun thing that I found was that this was in one of his earlier playbills, because I had a fun time looking through them. He was a pre-med student at the University of Manitoba when he decided he wanted to be an actor.
As you said, he could not come back to play Droll.
Yeah.
But he did come back to play Brother Theo, so that ties into the camaraderie that the people had when it came to the actors, because it's not as if they just discarded him and said, oh, he's unreliable, we can't have him. They went out of their way to try and have him in the show again, and they had him as Brother Theo.
They found a place.
And probably, I would say, a better character for him to play. I think Brother Theo is a far more energetic character. I think Brother Theo is is what I think of him more. I think it's a more substantive
feel more
role.
Fondly about that performance.
Yeah, and I don't love Brother Theo as a character, but I like the performance.
Yeah.
That's the way I would describe it. Well, here, Droll, he's fine. And maybe if we had more of him as Droll, I would think more fondly of Droll as a character, but I don't really care about this version of Droll either. And Droll's just a character the show doesn't have much investment in, because they realize that if you did, you could solve every problem with Droll.
Yep.
So you can't put investment in Droll. So Droll is kind of a weirdly perfunctory character, but also very important.
Instrumental.
But also not. And so, yeah, I always found this actor to be an interesting figure in the world of Babylon 5 because he played one character, then they recast him. Babylon 5 rarely did recasting of characters. They usually found an in-universe reason to change the actor. Or sometimes they just don't explain recastings. And they expect you not to notice, but I fucking notice. And so he then comes back as Brother Theo, and I remember learning when, oh, that's Droll? Because I had just assumed that the actor had passed away. They were an old person, and I thought, oh, maybe the actor was sick or passed away and they couldn't come back. And I didn't really think that then they would cast him again as a different character, and he was Brother Theo, and he had like a full beard and a little mustachy thing going on. And when we get to Brother Theo, we can talk about that character in details, and extensive.
He's a cute old man.
He's a prick as well. Brother Theo is like an annoying. He's annoying, and I wouldn't want to spend time with him. But also, I like watching him.
Insufferable. It's like I want to watch other people suffer Theo. I don't want to suffer Theo.
Are you starting in already, Theo? I tell you, in 50 years of living and 40 years of serving the Lord, I have never met a sorrier soul than Brother Theo here.
What would you rate this? Yum being bad, or Yum Yum being good?
I think I'm going to go with a yum for this one.
Yeah, I enjoy it when I watch it. I like the pacing, I like the threads, I like the momentum, I like the humor and the heart. But I don't really find the story all that compelling. And
it's just fine. It's not good. And thanks to your amazing, stellar, nuanced rating system that you have enforced on this podcast, that makes it a yum, doesn't it?
I don't get joy from giving B5 episodes yums, and it's not as if this is in the same league as TKO. This is better than TKO, but
Spectrum.
I wouldn't cry a river if I skipped this on a rewatch, and I don't. I watch all of them, but I wouldn't be really going, oh, I missed the episode. Other than maybe I would be bummed about the Ivanova speech and the Londo scenes. But again, this episode is good. It's good. It's a good episode, but I give it a yum.
Yep.
I think it just needs to be boiled down into one story. But maybe when we cover the second part.
Okay, well, let's hear
next week on B5.
Let's hear it, Ryan. Let's hear how that DVD
description describes the plot of A Voice in the Wilderness Part 2, which we'll be talking about next time.
On the next Babylon 5.
Oh boy, now this is a DVD description that I've been wanting. Incredible cyber machines found on Epsilon 3 spark a fierce tug of war to claim the highly advanced technology, but there may be a better way to settle the dispute. Make sure that no one can lay hand, claw, or tentacle. Who the fuck is laying a tentacle on this? I remember this. There's no tentacle players in this. But maybe I'm wrong. Okay. Or tentacle on the revolutionary machinery. Great. Perfect. Love that description. So, people, if you want to lay your hand, claws, or tentacles on more of us, you can follow our social medias. So we're on all of them: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, Tumblr, TikTok. Tentacle noises. This is in the description. We're always posting stuff on there, engaging with you further. We have all of the fun times on there. And we have an email address in which you can email us with your questions, your queries, your thoughts, your concerns, or just stuff you want to send over. Rachel, what is that email?
Well, we specifically need to address two of our listeners because they need to email us, remember?
Pat, Nick,
YumYumPod@gmail.com.
Yeah, okay. YumYumPod@gmail.com. We expect to get every piece of Canadian information out of you two guys and everyone else. If you have some too, sure, we'll take it, but you're not the experts. These two guys are.
We only want to hear from those two Canadians on this particular subject.
I'm sure they're extensive in knowledge of it. So that is that stuff. We have a Patreon. Rachel, could you please tell us all about the Yum Yum Podcast Patreon?
Well, we give our thoughts on general pieces of media, TV shows, movies, video games, podcast series. We also look at the top and bottom lowest rated episodes of Star Trek previous series.
Yeah, we look at the top 5 rated and the bottom 5 rated according to IMDb. We review them one at a time at random.
And we are making our way through the X-Men movies.
You know those great films? Have you ever tried not being a mutant? I have tried, and it just doesn't work. I've tried, just doesn't work. Tried washing it off, just doesn't work.
Oh, I thought you were talking about, like, your bird arm mutation.
No, I'm talking about my tentacle.
Okay.
So, that's our Patreon. You can find us on Patreon at YumYumPodcast. All of this, again, as always, is in the description of this episode. We like to make
it easy for you. And if you want to give us something in return, you can give us a 5-star rating on whatever podcatcher you are using and allows it.
What is 5 stars? I don't recognize that rating system. Do you mean that they have to give us a Yum Yum rating on whatever podcatcher they use? Because...
Well, Ryan, you know that not everybody has adapted to your philosophy and understanding of the world as yum or yum yum. So...
Sounds like people need to wake the fuck up.
Sometimes people just need to title their review Yum Yum and give it a 5-star if that's the metric.
Yeah.
That podcatcher discriminates their reviews by.
Unless they're Canadians, and then they describe it as moist, according to our Canadian expert, Pat, who, by the way, if I look and I don't see a review from you, Pat, that says not yum, but moist, I wet my pants, I'm going to be very disappointed, and you'll have to answer your crimes in your email next time. That's it from us. Jakar was not in this episode, nor has he been in many episodes, and he will still continue not to be in many, because Andres...
absence.
Because Andreas
Felt in our
Katsoulis,
hearts.
Andreas Katsoulis was too busy not performing on a boat to appear in this episode, and
Maybe
the others.
he was on Broadway.
Maybe he was on. You know what happened? That's exactly what happened. Brother Theo, the actor, he wasn't on Broadway, and the other guy who often would steal his spot, he was too busy as well. So Andreas Katsoulis, he bit the bullet and said, "Okay, guys, I'll be on Broadway." And that is why Jakar is not here to say farewell to you and farewell to everyone by saying good eating to you.